Welcome to WeAreSC. Welcome to Five Things after USC's 43-41 triple overtime win against Arizona. I keep having to check and make sure that the game's actually over and that we can record this. Guys, let's go straight into it, right? First thing for us, as always, is our player of the game. Greg, go ahead and give us your player of the game in this one.
Well, people are still up now to listen to us, unless you slept in and it's Sunday morning. You could have picked a particular play and named somebody the player of the game based on just the play, but I still have to think that Caleb Williams was a difference maker. I think the one play that really makes me think of him as the player of the game, it was actually a touchdown, but it was only a yard out. And he willed it. He went around the left side. He got hit, and he just struggled and stretched, and as they like to say it down at practice, strained to get in the end zone. And to me, sometimes, he didn't throw for the 400 yards. Excuse me, didn't have 5 touchdowns. But what he did, and even at the end, when I think we were overtime, he willed himself to get around the right side and into the end zone. And, you kind of questioned, did he actually get in? He hit the pylon, but he did get in. And I think the sign of a real champion is when things don't seem like it's going the way it's been every game, that he still managed to make it happen. And I know that some people in Heisman votes will sit there and say, well, you know what, there's other guys, but he's a winner, man. And you can't take that away from him. And they did win the game. Doesn't feel like it sometimes, but they did.
Mark, your player of the game in this one.
Yeah, it's hard to pick one because the plays were so far and few between looking good. Caleb Williams, obviously, he led the team. He kept them in the game. Eventually, they scored. I don't know. I'll just go with who the team and Lincoln Riley chose. Give it to Jacoby Covington. He had the big interception. That seemed to be the spark, I guess was the key word of the post game, to get things started for USC in offense. So Jacoby Covington, he stepped in, played cornerback, which they were pretty thin at that position for this game. So for him to step in and he hasn't had a significant role up until this game, that was a big play for him. So let's go there.
Yeah, I think for me, the player of the game is maybe each Arizona defensive player that had the critical penalties to keep USC's offense on the field. Arizona seemed like at times it did everything it could to keep USC's offense on the field. Early on, it was a good idea, and then late it kind of caught up with them. But seriously, right? It's Caleb Williams, just the one player, and it's cheating to do this, right? The one player that if you take out of USC's roster for that game, it's not close. I mean, he was off early. That passing game was off early, and there are concerns there seeing that. But you can tell with this USC team, when that happens, they know he's going to keep taking snaps. He's going to stay on the field, and he's going to always give them a chance to win every game. And that's what he did. Greg, you mentioned he kind of pushed himself into the end zone on that play to get in there. He had another, the touchdown run in overtime where he runs through guys, the short one here where I don't know how many quarterbacks can kind of bend that edge and make the guy miss and somehow get the ball over the pylon to score there. And just so many critical plays from him in a game where it went a while feeling like this is not going to end well. This is not going to end in a win. And you're right. He's the guy that kind of makes the plays to get it done. Let's go to our second thing here, the play of the game. Greg, back to you. What do you have for the play of the game?
Well, I could definitely see where you could say Jacoby Covington, was made the spark. I mean, there's no question about that. But I think when it really got down to it for me, it was definitely the last play of the game in overtime. And leave it to the defense. The deservedly maligned defense, which wasn't out of character at all tonight. I mean, they were just giving it up yardage like it was a rummage sale. Just take what you want. But you got to give credit to Mason Cobb, and you have to give credit to Prophet Brown. Maybe profit bound a little bit more because he's not a name we usually mention in the post game. And it was a little odd to see that play called, but it wasn't odd to see how they reacted to it. And it was almost like surrealistic when I was watching it because I was expecting something different. But boy, when it was time to make a stop, give them all the credit in the world. They made the stop. So that's my play of the game.
I'm with you. Sorry, Mark, but before you go, I'm with you in that it felt such a weird end, right? Like Arizona had been getting yards on that play all day. And then to see kind of a swarming USC defense like go and just stop that cold, and then the game's over. You're kind of trying to figure out, did that really just happen? All right, sorry, Mark, your play of the game in this one.
That's all right. No, so you had the botched field goal at the end of the game that could have won the game, and you're setting up for that, and to still see that happen, it's kind of like what happened the week before with the botched snap on the extra point. So between that, you can say that's a play of the game because I really thought at that point USC is not leaving this Coliseum with a win tonight. But then you also had Kalen Bullock making a really strong play in the end zone on a 2-point conversion that was vital.
Absolutely.
So there was a lot of great individual plays that we've already talked about, but I think that one that setting up for a game-winning field goal and then not even getting the opportunity to do it, I think that tested the team's resolve. They wanted to talk about that big time after the game, so I'm going to use that as my play of the game.
So my play of the game, the Covington one was huge because it set the offense up on a spot where you kind of fall forward and you get going a little bit when they just couldn't get anything done by themselves, and it gave the defense a win, and that was clearly big. The one for me is, and what kind of speaks to this whole game, the Marshawn Lloyd 24-yard run with 24 seconds left in the game that wins the game for USC. That was the game-winning play. USC gets the ball first and goal, I think at the 6 with 24 seconds left, and you win the game. And every single thing that happened from that point out, where Caleb tries to throw the quick shot over to Brendan Rice, they drop the snap. There's confusion about when we're going to take our timeout and do we want to spike it, and all of that stuff was the game. That was the game. It was just in its kind of, Marshawn Lloyd makes a great play, right? The jump cut, there's some blocking, you've got an offensive play, you think you're out of it, and then the sloppiness of those next 3 snaps was what this game was. I mean, that was it. It was USC having a chance to come back home after 2 road games and put a good showing together before going on the road again against a Notre Dame team that's going to be stung and looking to play hard. And that was kind of the way you end it. And that to me was everything that this game was. Just USC kind of tripping and falling and just sort of sloppy and not tightened up after you think they would be, again, getting this home game with something to prove, right? They know what everyone's been saying the last 2 weeks and how they won those games. And so to come out like this, I think was a big statement, not in a positive way, about how they started that game and how they finished that game. Obviously, the game-winning play not included there. We're a third down here. Third thing, expectation met. Greg, we'll go. What did you expect to see coming into this one, and what delivered?
I said it was going to be a tough game all the way through, and I knew by the way Arizona played Washington, because I watched the game, that I thought that Arizona was onto something in stopping the type of offense that Washington and USC have, and that is to keep everything in front of you and try not to give up a long pass. Now, SC did complete a couple of long passes, no doubt about it. But, in the end, they have I think SC is going to see the same game plan until somebody proves otherwise. I think that, fool me once, don't fool me twice. And I think that's what's going to happen at Notre Dame. But no, it was a tough game. Arizona's really come on. They've really improved over the years with Fish. People kind of made fun of them, the Fish, so to speak. And honestly, I think he's really putting together a really good program that's going to do pretty good, I think, when they go to the Big 12. So tough game, proved out to be correct. I didn't realize it would be this tough, but it was tough. Yeah.
Mark, expectation met for you in this one?
I kind of had a feeling that after the last game against Colorado, that they were going to try and come in and emphasize the run. And they did. They tried. I mean, they doubled their attempts from 16 in the last game. They had 33 in this game. So they tried. But the fact that they tried to run the ball and still weren't able to, I don't know if that's the expectation I wanted. I wanted them to try and run. They did that. But there's not a lot of expectation that I got out of this game, other than I hope that they would run the ball or try to, but they weren't that successful.
Yeah, for me, Greg, I think we're at fool me 3 or 4 or 5 times at this point, right? And it's not going to happen going forward. I think we have a really good sense of what this team is right now. And that was, I think, Mark, I told you before the game started, 35 points for Arizona was probably something that we were going to see, those wide receivers. And you knew some of these Servite guys coming back and playing in front of friends and family and all of that, that they were going to play hard, and they were going to be a tough out for USC. And at this point, yeah, the expectation in every game is this, right? You always kind of, coming into the season, we talked a lot. Is this going to be a year where USC has to score 45 to win most of their games? And it sure is at that point right now. Yes, it feels like you're going to have to hit upper 30s to 40s to win every game. And that was the expectation here. And yeah, USC needed just about all 43 of those points in this one. Our fourth thing, surprise. Greg, what surprised you in this one?
Well, I think this one kind of nailed it for me, that this team still seems at points in a game it's unorganized, that they make mistakes. That you look at them on defense, they're all pointing. I know that sounds good, like they're communicating, but it's like everybody's giving the impression like, well, am I supposed to be over here? No, you're over there. And I've even seen a little bit on offense, but more on defense. And at this point of the season, it still seems to me that the communication amongst the players and the sidelines just isn't where it should be. And you can get away with it a little bit when you're playing at home, but when it's nuts on the road, and believe me, trust me, Notre Dame, as much as they're kind of having their issues, they will be jacked up next week to knock off an undefeated, probably a top 10 team, maybe SC's 10. Maybe they'll drop another spot, possibly, because Oklahoma is probably going to make their way into the top 10 with Texas. So it's kind of like, subtraction with addition, or whatever they want to call it, or addition with subtraction. But boy, if you make these same mistakes in South Bend, you may not come out with a triple overtime win. Let's put it that way. And so I guess, I wrote last week, the headline I wrote was, "We are what we are," and this is who we are. So you kind of go with it. Maybe that lowers my disappointment in some areas, but this is just who they are.
Mark, you're surprised in this one.
Yeah, I'm not sure who this team is though yet right now, Greg. I got to be honest with you. Going back to the Colorado game, they went scoreless in the fourth quarter. They went scoreless in the first quarter. I don't know if that's happened to a Lincoln Riley coached offense before, to go 2 consecutive quarters without scoring a point. That's a surprise to me, that you play on the road for 2 weeks. You don't play up to the standard that USC is expected to play when you're better than those 2 teams. And then to come home and to, clean things up, work out things, so you look like the team you're supposed to be, and to actually regress. This team right now, I don't think I don't know if they're being prepared properly to go play at Notre Dame. To see USC come back home after the way they played on the road, and to say, well, we don't hear that outside noise. They're hearing it. And then to come home and respond that way, that surprised the hell out of me. To me, that is on the coaching staff. And you can't just keep selling the media and the fans, well, we're USC football. Everybody circles that game. Maybe USC should circle their next game.
Well, I think they will circle the next game.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who the opponent is. Be ready to play that next game.
I'm with you. The first quarter to me was an absolute shock. The way USC ended that Colorado game, to have a chance to come out against an Arizona team that has been terrible in the first quarter. Arizona's been outscored 31-7 in the first quarter this year. They had scored 7 first quarter points all year. And Jed Fish talked a lot this week about, well, we started drives in the first quarter and we scored in the second quarter. Fine, whatever you want to say. 31-7 outscored in the first quarter with 6 turnovers. They were beating USC 10-0 at the end of the first quarter. USC has outscored teams 77-14 in the first quarter. This is the first game that USC's offense did not come on the field and score a touchdown on their first drive. They were not ready to go in this game. They were not ready to go. And if they were ready, so it's either they got outplayed or outcoached, and probably both early on. And that was a surprise coming off the back-to-back road trips and knowing that they wanted to put something together here. A surprise again that you're kind of hearing now for the third game in a row a little bit. Oh, Arizona State did some things that maybe we didn't think they would do offensively. Colorado, clearly what they did in the second half caused USC a bunch of problems. And then Arizona out of the gate had USC's offensive number to the point where USC couldn't get anything going in their first 3 drives. So again, should we be surprised about that against Notre Dame? Because you're clearly kind of setting a trend at this point. And again, that first quarter to me here was surprising and set the tone kind of for the entire game going forward, again, based on certainly expectations that we had coming into this. Our fifth thing, the biggest takeaway, Greg, for you going forward, we're halfway, right? USC technically is where they wanted to be at the start of the season. You're undefeated at this point in the year going to Notre Dame. Your biggest takeaway from this triple overtime win?
Well, there's a lot of fight on. I will say that. They really competed. They didn't give up. I think this was the type of win that, when you look back at the history of winning teams, there's always that Oregon State win up in Corvallis. There's that triple overtime against Arizona here, where a team sometimes actually makes a turn and grows a little bit. And my biggest takeaway is they're going to need what they learned in this game. Now, I could argue that their offense tonight was an anomaly in the first half, because we don't generally see that, right? Generally speaking, after 6 games. So I'm going to take it away personally as that it was an anomaly. I think they will be ready to play when they're in South Bend. But this win will only mean something if they build on it, if they go into South Bend and come back and beat Utah, which may have Cameron Rising playing. So if there's a turning point in the season, it may turn out to be this game. I certainly hope so, but that's why they play the games. We do know one thing. The biggest takeaway is they're going to be really challenged in the second half of the season. That I feel pretty comfortable about.
Yeah. Mark, your biggest takeaway from this one?
That they're not improving week to week. I sound like a broken record, but again, to come home after playing on the road for 2 weeks in a row, the goal is to win the game, but you also want to look like you're improving. And this is 3 weeks in a row that they're just not. And it's to the point where, again, you can't just brush it off as this is college football, guys. This is how things go. You don't need to have the trained eye to see if your team is getting better on a week-to-week basis. And we just got through the easy part of the schedule. And that's my takeaway is I haven't seen the team progressing. We see players making plays individually, but as a team, no. They got blown off the ball on both sides of the ball today, offense and defense.
Let me ask you something real quick, Mark. Do you feel that they're physical enough?
Well, I think they tried to be tonight. They wanted to run the ball, but the fact of the matter is, even though they got 4.4 yards per carry, it was a struggle. A lot of those yards came on Caleb Williams' runs. So, you know, I thought I asked the hard question after the game, and Lincoln Riley, I'm not sure if he appreciated it, but I asked him, is this team struggling with their offensive identity right now? Because to go literally 2 consecutive quarters where you can't figure out when to run and when to pass the ball, that there's something there that's not working. So.
Yeah, I mean, the takeaway is that the loss is coming, right? And potentially very soon, because like you said, the games were going to get harder as you look at the schedule, but it's shrinking too fast. Like the performance and the wins and how you're winning is closing too quickly, and there's no rest, right? Like the bye week is done. You're going week to week. We saw some guys get hurt today. They had to go way deep into that corner depth chart. It's coming. It's coming. So I think that there's a way to look at this, and the team will look at it this way. And Lincoln Riley is not going to shy away from the fact that he's going to sit there and say, we came back against an Arizona team that can play. They've got players. Came back from 17-0 down after playing terribly to start the game. Had an end of the regulation play that could have been completely demoralizing. And they came back from all of that and won. Is that good? Yes. Right. That's good. You can say that.
That's even better if it happens on the road, though, Erik.
Sure. But that's not it, right? Like that will get you a win in this game. And I understand that that's fine, but the team has to know. They have to know, and they have to be serious about that's not going to work going forward. And I think the biggest takeaway is just kind of the general sloppiness. You've got some plays where you've got to take a timeout with 10 guys on the field. You've got a squib kick at the end of the first half that lets Arizona get a play with 4 seconds that they should not have gotten. Again, at the end of regulation, that should be an easy score. Whatever you want to do, score the touchdown or kick the field goal or whatever it is. And there's so many things. Again, you're halfway through the season where, Mark, like you mentioned, those are things that you should see less and less of as you go, and it's more and more. So I get celebrating the win. The players were ecstatic after that, right? You're down 17-0. You're up against it. You have to go through all of that. You celebrate that win. I get it. There are more questions, I think, after 6 weeks about how good is this team actually than there were at the start of the year. And I don't think that's where USC wanted to be now, because the tests are coming. I mean, this is going to be a struggle, and I think we're all pretty confident saying if the wins are going to happen, they're going to look like this. They're going to look like sloppy shootouts where you got to score, and you got to score a bunch of points against these teams. So, I mean, that's kind of the rep from what ended up being, if you didn't have expectations going into it, a thrilling triple overtime win for USC that came with tons of heartache and issues and all of that stuff that went into it, and some major questions that USC on really in all 3 phases that they're going to have to get answered very quickly, because it's on the road to South Bend and a Notre Dame team, again, that might not be great, but will be absolutely charged up to see USC come in there next weekend. So again, for Marc Kulkin, for Greg Katz, this is Erik McKinney. That's our look, our 5 things look at USC's 43-41 triple overtime win against Arizona at the Coliseum. Thanks for watching 5 Things. Thanks for watching WeAreSC.